My sister texted, "I'm quitting my job. You'll take care of us while I figure things out." I replied, "That's not on me," and accepted a job abroad. 43 missed calls followed. I stared at my phone screen, watching the notifications pile up like digital avalanche warnings. Jenna's certainty that I'd financially support her and her boyfriend Caleb while she found herself wasn't just presumptuous. It was the final move in a chess game I'd been losing my entire life. But something shifted in my chest as I watched those missed calls accumulate. The familiar weight of obligation that usually settled on my shoulders felt different now, lighter. Like I'd finally found the strength to shrug it off. Within 10 minutes of my response, Mom's text arrived like clockwork. "Banned from Thanksgiving until you sign your sister's $150,000 loan." I actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised me. They'd escalated from emotional manipulation to financial hostage-taking to holiday exile in less time than it takes to microwave dinner. The Dublin contract was still open on my laptop screen, a job offer I'd been sitting on for weeks, afraid to pull the trigger because family needed me. Not anymore. My name is Alex, and I've spent 32 years being the family's designated problem solver, the reliable one, the backup plan. While Jenna got praised for her creative spirit and journey of self-discovery, I got praised for having steady income and low maintenance needs. Different standards, same household. She got allowances for trying. I got responsibilities for succeeding. That dynamic never changed, it just grew more expensive. I work in operations management for a multinational logistics company, specializing in supply chain optimization and cost reduction. It's steady work that pays $95,000 annually, and more importantly, it taught me to recognize patterns, identify systemic problems, and implement sustainable solutions, skills that apparently applied to more than shipping manifests. My apartment lease was month to month, my emergency fund had $47,000, and I'd been building a professional network across 3 continents. Resources my family had no idea existed because they'd never asked about my life beyond my bank balance. The real advantage I possessed was professional experience dealing with financial manipulation. My company regularly negotiated with vendors who used identical tactics to what my family deployed. Emotional appeals, artificial urgency, guilt-based leverage, and threats to withdraw cooperation. I had spent 5 years learning to separate business decisions from emotional pressure. Time to apply those skills closer to home. I also had something Jenna desperately needed that she'd never acknowledged. I was the only person in our family with actual financial stability and creditworthiness. She worked sporadic retail jobs between passion projects, making maybe $18,000 in a good year. Caleb delivered food when he felt like it, averaging $12,000 annually. My parents were leveraged to their eyeballs on a house they couldn't afford, carrying $280,000 in mortgage debt on Dad's $52,000 teaching salary. Without my consistent financial contributions to family expenses over the past decade, approximately $2,400 monthly in various bills, emergencies, and temporary assistance, their comfortable lifestyle would have collapsed years ago. They just never bothered calculating how much my reliability was worth until I was about to withdraw it. My first strategic move was comprehensive documentation. I spent the next 4 hours creating a detailed financial audit of every family arrangement, starting with my phone records to timestamp every emergency request over the past 3 years. The pattern was remarkable in its consistency. Crisis declarations followed by increasingly desperate appeals, then temporary gratitude, then radio silence until the next crisis. I created 3 separate spreadsheets, one tracking my direct financial contributions, $87,400 over 3 years, another documenting shared accounts and services, $14,200 annually, and a third calculating the opportunity cost of loans that were never repaid, $23,800 in principal plus foregone investment returns. The numbers were staggering. I'd been subsidizing 4 adults' lifestyles to the tune of $125,000 over 3 years, while my own retirement contributions had been minimal, and my emergency fund had been repeatedly depleted for other people's crises. I photographed every bank statement, saved every Venmo transaction, and created a timeline showing how each temporary arrangement had become permanent without discussion or gratitude. Next, I called my college roommate Marcus, who'd become a family law attorney specializing in financial disputes. "Can they actually hold a holiday invitation hostage over a loan co-signature?" I asked. "Legally, no. Ethically, also no. Strategically, they're idiots," he replied. "Never negotiate from a position of emotional desperation. The fact that they're playing holiday cards this early means they have no real leverage." He walked me through cosigner liability laws in excruciating detail, explaining exactly how signing that loan would make me responsible for $150,000 regardless of Jenna's business success or failure. "Your sister's business plan is irrelevant," he said. "Banks don't ask for cosigners when they believe in the borrower. They're asking you to guarantee something they've already determined is likely to fail." Marcus also explained the legal implications of my current financial entanglements. "You're essentially providing spousal-level support to 4 adults without any of the legal protections marriage provides," he said. "If any of them get into debt trouble, creditors could potentially come after assets you've helped them acquire. You need to document everything and start unwinding these arrangements immediately." He recommended I create a formal notice of financial separation and send it certified mail to establish a paper trail. I also contacted my financial advisor, Sarah Chen, who confirmed what I already suspected. Carrying $150,000 in potential liability would destroy my own borrowing capacity for the next several years. "You're in prime position to buy property or start your own business," she explained. "Co-signing this loan would lock you out of every wealth-building opportunity until it's paid off, which, statistically, means forever." She helped me run detailed projections. Even if Jenna's business succeeded, the loan terms meant I'd be legally obligated for payments if she missed even one installment. Small businesses fail at an 80% rate within 5 years, and Jenna had never successfully completed any business venture she'd started. Sarah also calculated the true cost of my family's financial dependence. "You're currently spending 34% of your gross income supporting other adults," she said. "That's money that should be going toward your own mortgage, retirement, and investment portfolio. If you redirected those funds starting now, you'd have an additional $847,000 in retirement savings by age 65, assuming conservative 7% annual returns." The number hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just supporting my family. I was sacrificing my entire financial future for their comfort. The Dublin offer represented everything I'd been building toward professionally. International experience, a 40% salary increase to $133,000, and complete geographic separation from family financial drama. I'd turned it down twice because Mom insisted Jenna was at a delicate stage and needed family support. But delicate stages had been lasting for over a decade now, funded primarily by my credit score and employment stability. That evening, I made my decision with the methodical precision of a supply chain analysis. I opened my laptop, scrolled to the bottom of the Dublin contract, and clicked Accept. Start date Monday. Housing provided, flight booked automatically. Salary $133,000 plus housing allowance and international experience bonus. The system confirmations felt like padlocks clicking shut on a vault I'd been guarding for people who'd never thanked me for the service. Before I could second-guess myself, I immediately began implementing my financial separation strategy. I opened new accounts at a different bank and transferred my emergency fund. I changed my direct deposit to the new account. I updated my address with all financial institutions to my office address to prevent family members from intercepting mail. Each action was documented with timestamps and confirmation numbers. The family retaliation was swift and predictable. Within hours of accepting the Dublin position, my phone became a battlefield of notifications. Mom's all-caps texts about family loyalty and abandonment. Dad's voicemails about responsibility and sacrifice, delivered in his disappointed teacher voice. Jenna's Instagram story about toxic siblings who prioritize money over love, complete with crying selfies and inspirational quotes about family betrayal. Caleb's single text. "Bro, not cool." Each message was a data point, confirming I'd made the correct strategic decision. But the real escalation came when they realized I was serious. Mom called my office directly, speaking to my assistant and claiming there was a family emergency that required my immediate attention. When I didn't respond, she showed up at my apartment building, buzzing every unit until someone let her into the lobby. I watched from my window as she paced back and forth, alternately crying and shouting into her phone. Building security eventually asked her to leave, but not before she'd made a scene that had neighbors peering out their doors. The next morning brought a coordinated FaceTime intervention attempt. All four of them crowded around Mom's phone screen like a hostile board meeting. "You will apologize to your sister," Mom announced without preamble. "You will fix this." I was drinking coffee at my kitchen counter, fully dressed, completely calm. "I won't be supporting two healthy adults indefinitely," I replied. "I won't be co-signing loans for businesses with no revenue model, and I won't be canceling career opportunities because other people haven't planned ahead." Jenna appeared in frame with theatrical tears and smudged mascara. "You've never believed in me," she sobbed. "You're punishing me for being different." The performance was impressive but irrelevant. "I believed in you enough to pay your car insurance for 2 years, $2,280 total," I said evenly, consulting the spreadsheet I'd prepared. "I believed in you enough to add you to my phone plan, $1,680 annually. I believed in you enough to cover your apartment deposit, your vet bills, and your certification courses, $8,400 combined. I stopped believing in your financial plan when you asked me to guarantee $150,000 with no business model, no revenue projections, and no collateral." Dad tried the authority approach. "Watch your tone with your mother." Mom tried guilt. "If you leave now, you abandon this family." Caleb contributed his signature intellectual depth. "Bro, this ain't it." I let them cycle through their entire repertoire while I finished my coffee. When they exhausted their arguments, I spoke with the calm professionalism I used for difficult vendors. "I'm not your guarantor. I'm not your emergency fund. I'm not your backup plan. I'm your son and brother, and I love you enough to stop enabling your financial irresponsibility." I pulled up my documentation on screen. Over the past 3 years, I've contributed $87,400 in direct financial support, plus $42,600 in shared services and opportunity costs. That's $130,000 that should have gone toward my own financial security. I'm 32 years old with $47,000 in retirement savings because I've been funding 4 other adults' lifestyles. The silence that followed was worth every uncomfortable family dinner I'd sat through over the past decade. Finally, Dad jabbed his finger at the screen. "You will regret this." I looked directly into the camera and delivered the line I'd been practicing. "I already regret not doing this sooner." Then I ended the call. Over the next 48 hours, I systematically disconnected from every shared financial arrangement, following Marcus's legal advice to the letter. Phone plan, removed Mom and Jenna, saving $140 monthly. Car insurance, unlinked Jenna, saving $96 monthly. Streaming services, change passwords and remove shared access, saving $67 monthly. Utilities at my parents' house, removed my auto-pay authorization, and notified the companies in writing that I was no longer responsible for the accounts. Emergency fund, transferred to new bank with strict instructions that no one else could access the accounts. Credit monitoring, activated to prevent unauthorized applications in my name. I also sent certified letters to each family member, formally notifying them of my financial separation, as Marcus had recommended. The letters were professional and unemotional, simply stating that I would no longer be providing financial support, co-signing loans, or maintaining shared accounts effective immediately. Each letter included a detailed accounting of what I'd contributed over the past 3 years, and a clear statement that no further assistance would be provided. The consequences accelerated faster than I'd anticipated. By Thursday, Jenna had posted a public social media meltdown about financial abuse and sibling betrayal, her comment section filled with sympathy at first, then questions as details emerged. "Wait, he was paying all your bills?" one friend asked. "He covered your car insurance and phone plan?" asked another. "How much money are we talking about here?" The narrative shifted from abandoned victim to entitled dependent in real time. She deleted the post within 6 hours, but screenshots had already been shared in the local community groups. Mom tried enlisting extended family as reinforcements, but the strategy backfired spectacularly. Aunt Rose, who'd been watching the family dynamics for years, surprised everyone by taking my side. "About time that boy stood up for himself," she told my mother, loud enough for the entire Thanksgiving planning committee to hear. "You've been bleeding him dry for years, while Jenna plays artist and Caleb plays video games." Uncle Jim chimed in with his own observations about Jenna's work allergy and Caleb's ambitious laziness. Cousin Patricia, who worked in banking, pointed out that asking someone to co-sign a $150,000 loan without collateral was financial insanity. The family coalition Mom expected to shame me into compliance instead became a support network celebrating my economic independence. Several relatives privately reached out to congratulate me on finally setting boundaries. Aunt Rose even offered to help me move my belongings if my parents tried to interfere with my departure. By Friday, the desperation had reached new levels. Dad showed up at my apartment building at 6 a.m., pounding on the lobby door and shouting about disrespect and ingratitude. I watched from my window as building security escorted him off the property. He texted, "Coward," from the parking lot. I replied, "Boundaries," and blocked his number. The relief was immediate and unexpected, like finally taking off shoes that had been too tight for years. Jenna tried a different approach, showing up at my office with Caleb in tow. They made it past the lobby, but were stopped by security when they couldn't provide a valid business reason for their visit. My assistant, who'd been briefed on the family situation, politely informed them that I was in meetings all day and couldn't see visitors without appointments. They waited in the lobby for 3 hours before giving up. Jenna left a handwritten note that was equal parts guilt trip and financial demand. I filed it with my other documentation and had security add their names to the restricted visitor list. The weekend brought increasingly frantic attempts at contact. Mom called from different numbers when she realized I'd blocked her primary phone. She enlisted neighbors to call on her behalf. She even had my childhood pastor reach out, claiming there was a spiritual crisis in the family that required my intervention. Each attempt was documented and added to my growing file of evidence showing their escalating desperation. The Dublin flight left Monday morning at... I printed my boarding pass and taped it to my apartment door, along with a note. Emergency contact information with building management. Back in 18 months. Do not co-sign loans while I'm gone. Saturday night, while my family held their emergency meeting without me, I was having dinner with colleagues who were genuinely excited about my international assignment. People who saw my professional competence instead of my bank balance. Sunday evening brought Mom's final negotiation attempt. "Last chance. Sign the loan, keep your place at Thanksgiving, and we'll never mention this again." I replied with mathematical precision. "The only way to stop being the family ATM is to stop dispensing cash. I'm not changing my mind, my flight, or my boundaries." She responded with a threat about permanent estrangement. I responded with confirmation that I understood and accepted her terms. The flight to Dublin was the most peaceful 6 hours I'd experienced in years. No emergency calls, no crisis texts, no guilt-laden voicemails. Just silence and the knowledge that I was finally prioritizing my own future over other people's poor decisions. 18 months in Dublin changed everything, but the most important changes happened in the first week. My bills dropped to exactly what I consumed. $800 monthly for housing, utilities, food, and transportation. My bank account reflected only my spending decisions. My phone contained messages from people who valued my thoughts, not my financial contributions. For the first time since college, my budget served my goals instead of my family's emergencies. I threw myself into the work with an energy I hadn't felt in years. Without the constant drain of family financial crises, I could focus entirely on professional development. I completed 2 additional certifications, learned conversational Irish, and built relationships with colleagues across Europe. My performance reviews were outstanding, and I was offered a permanent position with a promotion to senior operations manager at $145,000 annually. Meanwhile, back home, the consequences of my financial withdrawal were playing out exactly as I'd predicted. Jenna's business never materialized since no cosigner meant no loan. The bank had required a guarantor because her business plan was essentially open a boutique and hope people buy things. Without my financial backing, she couldn't secure funding, couldn't lease commercial space, and couldn't purchase inventory. The dream died within 2 weeks of my departure. She moved back home with Caleb, whose food delivery career couldn't support 2 adults and a dog. Their combined income of roughly $30,000 annually wasn't enough to maintain independent housing, especially with Caleb's student loan payments and Jenna's credit card debt. My parents' basement became their permanent residence, an arrangement that created immediate tension in the household. Mom and Dad's mortgage payments became their sole responsibility when my monthly contributions stopped arriving. They'd been counting on my $800 monthly temporary assistance to cover the gap between Dad's teacher salary and their actual expenses. Without that buffer, they fell behind on payments within 3 months. They tried to refinance but discovered that their debt-to-income ratio was too high for favorable terms. They were forced to list the house for sale and downsize to a 2-bedroom apartment, which meant Jenna and Caleb had to find alternative arrangements. The domino effects continued throughout my absence. Jenna's car was repossessed when she couldn't make payments without my insurance subsidy and occasional emergency assistance. Caleb's gaming setup was sold to cover rent on a studio apartment they shared with another couple. Mom's part-time job at the library became full-time out of necessity. Dad took on tutoring work in the evenings to supplement his income. I received updates on these developments through Aunt Rose, who maintained contact despite the family's attempts to turn relatives against me. "They're learning what their lifestyle actually costs," she reported during one of our monthly calls. "Your mother keeps saying she doesn't understand where all the money went, but I think she's starting to figure it out." The most telling moment came 8 months into my Dublin assignment, when Mom called from a number I didn't recognize. She'd gotten my international contact information from my employer's emergency contact system, claiming there was a medical crisis. When I called back, there was no emergency, just a desperate attempt to negotiate my return. "We've learned our lesson," she said. "We don't need you to co-sign anything. We just need you to come home." But when I asked specific questions about their financial situation and what had changed, the conversation devolved into familiar patterns. They still expected me to resume my role as family safety net, just with slightly modified terms. They hadn't learned the lesson at all. They'd just learned to be more careful about how they asked. I returned from Dublin with international experience, expanded professional network, and $73,000 in additional savings. The absence of family financial obligations had allowed me to maximize my retirement contributions, build a substantial emergency fund, and even invest in a diversified portfolio. I'd also been promoted twice and had job offers from 3 different companies. I bought a 2-bedroom condo with harbor views for $285,000, using my Dublin savings as a down payment. The mortgage was entirely in my name, with no co-signers, no shared ownership, and no family members on any of the paperwork. For the first time in my adult life, I owned something that couldn't be leveraged for someone else's financial emergency. The family's attempts at reconciliation were predictable and unsuccessful. Jenna sent a text on my birthday. "Are you happy now?" I replied honestly. "Yes, I hope you find what you're looking for." She never responded, but Aunt Rose told me she'd shown the message to everyone as evidence of my coldness. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being valued only for my financial contributions, they were now upset that I'd found happiness without them. Dad made one final attempt at reconciliation, showing up at my new condo with a bottle of wine and an apology speech he'd clearly rehearsed. "We miss you," he said. "Family is more important than money." I invited him in and listened to his entire presentation. When he finished, I asked a simple question. "If I needed to borrow $50,000 tomorrow, would you co-sign a loan for me?" The silence that followed answered everything. He left without the wine. Mom's approach was more subtle, but equally transparent. She began sending cards for minor holidays, sharing family photos that conspicuously excluded me, and making comments to relatives about how successful Alex has become, while emphasizing how lonely I must be. The subtext was clear. I could buy my way back into the family whenever I was ready to resume my role as financial provider. But I'd learned the difference between being needed and being loved. Family love shouldn't require a credit score. Real relationships survive boundary setting. I wasn't banned from anything that mattered. I was free from everything that had been holding me back. Caleb eventually found steady work at a warehouse and moved out of Jenna's studio apartment. They broke up 6 months later when the financial stress became too much for their relationship. Jenna moved back in with my parents, who had settled into their smaller apartment and tighter budget. She got a job at a department store and started taking community college classes, finally beginning to build the independent life she should have developed years earlier. My parents adjusted to their reduced circumstances, but never stopped hoping I'd return to my old role. They attended my housewarming party and complimented my success, but I could see them calculating how much my new salary could contribute to their comfort. The conversation was pleasant but superficial. We'd become polite strangers who shared a history but not a future. The lesson I learned wasn't about money. It was about the difference between being needed and being loved. Family love shouldn't require a credit score. Real relationships survive boundary setting. I'm not banned from anything that matters. I choose what I support and whom I support. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is letting them solve their own problems. The best revenge is simply refusing to be anyone's backup plan. I sleep well in my Harborview condo, knowing that every dollar in my account serves my goals, not someone else's poor decisions. I'm not a wallet with feelings. I'm a person with boundaries, and those boundaries saved my financial future.